Welcome to another edition of Show After the Show. Hi, I'm Rob Dempsey. We get to know the people that make this community so great. One of those people is on with me right now. This is Kelly Ross. She is the CEO of Piedmont Women's Center in the upstate of South Carolina. We're going to learn a little bit more about a 5K. It's a fundraising event for Piedmont's Women's Center. It's going to be at Bob Jones University on May 15th. It's a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. But first things first, congratulations on 28 years of marriage.
Can you believe it? What happened?
And the time goes by so quickly. I understand that you picked April 9th for a very specific reason to get married on. Why was that?
Exactly. You know, my husband and I were looking at the calendar. We weren't much on long engagements. And by that, I mean like a couple of weeks after he asked me. And there was this crazy thing on our calendar. It said Good Friday. And we looked at each other. We weren't believers. And we were like, hey, Good Friday. It already says it. It's going to be a great day. And so 28 years later, we found, along our journey, we found Jesus together. And God has just blessed our 28 years in a very radical way. So pretty awesome.
I want to go back in time on family vacations for you. In particular, a family vacation you took one year to Myrtle Beach.
Yeah. So my dad, he was always in a hurry to get somewhere and then always in a hurry to get home. And so he did our packing on our way from leaving Myrtle Beach and going back home. We had a great few days at the beach. And it's so funny because we never supervised his packing. And we had this old beat up Plymouth and the gas tank leaked. And we were always having to park like a certain direction everywhere we went to keep the gas tank from leaking. And so we were on our way home and it was hot, no air conditioning in the car. And all of a sudden the whole rear end of the car like exploded. My sister and I were tossed. I mean, this was before seatbelts, obviously. And my dad was like, what? I mean, have we like died? We don't even know it yet. So he pulls over and he goes to the trunk and he opens up the trunk. And in his hurry to get us home, he did not deflate the flotation devices that we had used while we were at the beach. And so this is these 70s vinyl heavy duty floats. So when it exploded, it like really exploded. Like it was those pieces of vinyl were all over the back of the trunk. And it's one of those things that all these, 40 plus years later as a family, it's one of those things we still laugh about because we all really thought we had died. The car exploded from the poor gas tank.
And thankfully it was just those inflatables that never got deflated.
That's right. That's right. Because we were in a hurry.
Yeah. But they got deflated eventually, it looks like.
Well, they took care of themselves.
All over the car, yeah. You grew up having a brother, but not knowing your brother.
That's exactly right. And in fact, it wasn't until I was 19 that I even knew that this other person was in my life. And my mom, like many women in the 60s who found themselves pregnant and unsure of what to do, went to the Florence Crimson Home in Charleston, South Carolina. And she did a very courageous thing and placed my brother for adoption. And many years later, we reconnected and got to know each other, and he's a part of my extended family now. So Donnie is just an incredible man who I count it an honor to be his sister. And for my mom, having the courage to just give another family. I mean, his parents were never able to have children. He was their only child. And to think about the gift my mom was able to give them to become a family. I mean, what a privilege it is to think about that.
Your journey is very interesting because you had become an X-ray technician when you were in the Army.
Yeah. So I definitely did not wake up and say, nobody, I don't think at 5 years old would say, I'm going to be the CEO of a pregnancy center when I grow up. That's just not what we do. And so I joined the Army after a year of college in Spartanburg in 1991. And I had the greatest experience in the Army. It gave me great training. I met my husband there. And I met the woman who would eventually bring me to Jesus. Like she just lived different. And I remember being so captivated by how she lived different. It was not what I had grown up with in church. It was just much different than that. And I just remember being very curious. And over time, she just got to know me.
Mm.
And one day she just asked me, she's like, "Who is Jesus?" And I'm like, "Well, he's the Son of God." Is this a trick question? I don't know what you want me to say. And she said, "You grew up in church, and that's all the information that you have for me." And I really didn't know where she was going. And I said, "Well, who's Jesus to you?" And she sat there for about 15 minutes and described to me a relationship with a person who, for the first time in my life, felt like he was in a room with us. And I remember thinking, I'm not sure if she's crazy or if she's right, but I hope she's right. Because if she's right, there's hope. And that just started this crazy journey of faith. And I did radiology for about 20 years and really felt God calling me into ministry. And I went from being on a church staff to leading a smaller pregnancy center. And then somehow it was just a privilege to be selected as the next director, CEO here at Piedmont Women's Center.
And the numbers of what Piedmont Women's Center has reached is phenomenal. I just want to brag on Kelly's organization. In 30 years, 90,000 women served. 10,000 in just the last 5 years alone. And all these many stories, or I should say all these many, well, I should say stories, because everyone has a story that has come through. What's one that you can share with us?
Yeah, so it actually happened during the pandemic. And, you know, in the early days of the pandemic, I think we didn't really know what was happening. Was the world ending? What was life like? And women who found themselves pregnant during the pandemic were very worried about the pregnancy. And many of them chose abortion because they were scared and they were worried and they didn't have information. And we saw the numbers of people going in and out of the abortion clinic on Grove Road just increase radically. And we stayed open because we were determined we were essential and nobody was going to declare us non-essential. And we stayed open. And during that time, we served a young woman who was pregnant and didn't want to be. And while she was here that day, we were able to provide her with pregnancy testing and ultrasound. And she had the ultrasound done, and she was obviously emotional about it. But we didn't know. We didn't know still in that moment, was she going to make a decision for life? And she leaves, and we follow up call her. We send her text messages and emails, and we could not get in touch with her. So we really weren't sure what her decision was. And so what we did is we basically just continued to pray for her. And then 2 weeks ago, she shows up at Piedmont Women's Center with her 3-month-old baby.
How great.
And she looked at us and she said, "I just wanted you to know that I chose life for my unborn child." Well, I shared the story in a church. She's like, "I can't imagine my life without this 3-month-old." Like she was just bubbling with joy. And so the next Sunday I was speaking in a church and I shared this story. And a woman comes up to me after the service and she said, 17 years ago, Piedmont Women's Center served me. And I can't imagine life without my 17-year-old. And, you know, that's the legacy of Piedmont Women's Center. Like we have this undeserved privilege of saving generations of people. Like that's, who gets to do that? Like this is literally the best job on the planet.
It sure is. You have 2 fundraisers that you usually do a year. Because of COVID, you just mentioned that. You couldn't do one of them, but you do have a 5K that's coming up on Saturday, May 15th. Starts at 8 o'clock in the morning at Bob Jones University. I know you're hopeful that a lot of people come out to this 5K.
Yeah, so the Kids Fun Run will start at 8 o'clock. And we always want to celebrate kids and family. And then our adult 5K will start at 8:30. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think the most people we've ever had is right at 380, 390. We would love to blow past that this year and have up to 500 people or even more. I had a dream the other week that we had 900 people there. Guys, help my dream come true. Let's have 900 people there and send a clear message to our community that life still matters. That's the cool thing about fundraisers for Piedmont Women's Center it's not just about having an event, it's about having a purposeful event that allows us to serve clients well in our community. And so typically in March, we have our big Night for Life event. We've actually moved it to the fall. So we'll have that in September. We still are having it, but we just thought, maybe we can be less cautious. And I can actually hug some people in September because I'm a hugger and I'm really looking forward to hugging folks.
Well, virtual hug to you, Kelly. Thank you so much for joining us. Kelly Ross is the CEO of Piedmont Women's Center. 5K is coming up. We have all the information on this page. All you have to do is click. You'll get right on through. Again, we'll see you for another edition of Show After the Show coming up really soon.